Okay, this is Writing to Learn Journal 10 by me, Omar Guerrero. The text I have chosen is for Music Grade 3, Historical and Cultural Relevance. The student examines music in relation to history and cultures. The student is expected to identify music from diverse genres, styles, periods, and cultures. Critical evaluation and response. The student listens to, responds to, and evaluates music and musical performances. The student is expected to respond verbally and through movement to short musical examples. I decided to choose two of them because to really explain the lesson, I'm gonna take the lesson uses parts of both of them, but I will get to that later. The Chapter 10 was about the purpose of discussion in classroom, and it gives us the three main reasons for discussing in the classroom, and they are: it helps the teacher know if the students are understanding the content and to what extent. Also, it helps students understand the content even better, and last is it creates a bridge between students and teachers. I can say from experience that the classes that I've learned the most from are classes in which I have a lot of discussion between the students and the teachers. So I will explain my lesson first. So the purpose of my lesson is for students to recognize the classical period and be able to know what it was all about. So the lesson plan starts off by having students come into the classroom. Right, they get in, and the first thing you do is to take two students to come to the front and talk to each other as if they don't know each other, like if they've never met. So what will happen will be the usual, hello, how are you? I am good. What is your name? My name is blah blah blah. And that's when you will emphasize how having a conversation is balanced, and usually you answer the same length of the question. And then what you will have to do after the students have talked to each other, you will ask the class what they observed, or do they have any thoughts about it. And then that's when you will say that the students will you tend to answer the same length as the question. And so the meat of the lesson is to watch an episode that is called the Classical Period. And it's a video where it explains how classical music was very well balanced. It was all balanced, and it was simple, and it was all just built on balanced phrases, and before going into the video, the prior knowledge they need is of the Baroque period, which is a period before the classical music. But before you get to classical, you do have to go through the Baroque period. And the Baroque period, the students might know it as the fancy period, where the music was, very decorated. It was when people were really bringing out the fanciness in music, trying to be glorified for your music. And then, so the classical period episode is about a woman who wants to work at a music shop, but she talks way too much. Whenever the owner asks her a question, she will always go on and to say so many things on things that are necessary. After the question, it's a short question, and she will talk and talk and talk. And that's not what the classical period was about. The man then takes her and shows her the differences between or how the classical period can help her in her when talking to people. So the classical periods was very balanced. You would have a phrase of four measures, and then another four measures, and then another four measures. And he gives different examples of that. And then, so after watching the whole episode, the questions for discussion I have is explain how classical music helped Gwen talk less, name three notable composers of the classical period, describe how the classical cake differed from the Baroque cake, which is part of the video. And lastly, do you agree that the idea that classical music is simple? With the idea that classical music is simple, why or why not? So, for these questions, I chose them in this order because it starts off with, it builds up in rigor. Because first it says like explain how classical music helped Gwen talk less, which was part of the video. It was a pretty literal question. And next is name three notable composers of the classical period, which were part of the video but could also be tied to another previous lesson, or it is part of the video, but it should have been discussed already also. And then describe how the classical cake differed from the Baroque cake. And these are just pictures of two different, they're wedding cakes, and then one of them is very colorful and decorated, and the other is pretty simple. It's just like the regular blocks, and the other one has different things going on. It has different colors. And that is where it builds up in rigor, in which first it was just very little questions, and now maybe the students will have different observations about the different cakes. And lastly is, do you agree with the idea that classical music is simple? Why or why not? And this is where you will have the different answers, and maybe the students will have trouble with it, and then that's where the book comes in, and it talks about different ways to help students answer these questions. For example, prompting, which is give them a big hint, but that's not what this last question is about. Maybe the last one, for prompting, we could use the naming the three notable composers, where you will have almost give it to them, like this one. There's one that starts with an M, there's one that starts with a B, and the other ones are top-down question clusters, which you will start with very literal questions and then come down to what you want them to know. But for the last one, I would probably, it's more of a think aloud kind of answer, because there's no really correct answer, and you can you can lead them a certain way. Like for classical music still sounds complicated because of it's very notey, and some of them might be able to hear the conversation in the music, and some of them may not. And so this is how I believe the students will remember the classical period. They will remember Gwen, the girl that would talk a lot, and how the classical period was the opposite of that. It was very conversational. First you have this, and then you have this, and it was all the same length. It was very equal. Another topic I liked from the chapter 10 is having constructive criticism and finding something positive to stress is always something that will make the students feel better of themselves, even though they are wrong. For example, in music, you can always find, if a student is wrong in something they're trying to answer, you can always go into their head and see why they thought of that. And you can make them feel like, well, okay, you are here and then you found this, but you're looking for something else, but you are in the right path and you are connecting things together. And so, by having all these discussions and after watching the video, that's how I believe the students will remember how the classical period was characterized by being equal and simple. And that is it.